Hello, it's DeShawn Wert. I'm here for the second week of our Stop Fretting Over Failure Challenge. Today in this video, we're going to talk about some of the failure triggers. We're going to, gotta get comfy here. We're gonna review a little bit about last week. Last week is kind of let's get everybody on the same page. So the curated materials for you in last week's email were about mindsets. And mindsets are the bottom line, most important thing you can do when you're looking at change. You have to look at how you view the world, and you have to make choices about how you're going to move forward from that. And we also talked about triggers. So those triggers, those failure triggers, having a way to address those failure triggers are how we're going to spend our time today. We talked about fixed mindsets, and we've talked about growth mindsets. And everybody's a mixture of both. We talked about those triggers, which happen to be things like setbacks, things that are unexpected that happened in our life. The success of others, watching others succeed, can be a failure trigger. And if we don't perceive ourselves in the place that we should be, that can happen as a trigger for us. Being critiqued. Wondering if you're hearing all the things I'm hearing on my, sorry if you do, just try to ignore them. But being critiqued is not seeing feedback as helpful, but as I'm not good enough. That's a big one for me. And then there's being challenged, which means learning something new and hard. And then there's hard work, which is we've been introduced to something, we may know how to do it, but it doesn't come natural. It's something we have to work at. So all those things trigger our feelings of failure. And coming up with a plan is what we're going to do today. So when any of those triggers come up, you will have a plan. My goal for you is to have you write your system or plan or process or how you're going to do it. I'm going to give you one. You're going to write it in your future me letter to yourself and get it mailed to you in a couple of weeks. And then you'll have it to refer to a couple of times. So that's what we're going to do today. Talk about that plan and then some of the curated material that's going to be included in the email that's coming with you. So this week, we're developing a self-compassion plan that will hopefully combat those triggers. All right. So if you've been on the Facebook page group, you've seen those triggers on there. And several of you have gotten back with me and said, you know, DeShawn, setbacks are hard. And personally, that's one of my hardest. So I'm going to walk us through the process for setbacks, although this process works for any of the other triggers too. And so before I talk about the setback process, I want you to know that I have experienced setbacks. In fact, there was a traumatic one, very traumatic one that happened a couple of years ago that had to do with my health. And this setback messed with my profession. This setback interfered with a life goal I'd had for over 25 years. And it was brutal. And that's really what got me started thinking about failure and why it was so hard for me to face it. And this is what started all the personal study. And so a couple of years back, I had just landed a dream job of mine as an administrator in a building, an elementary building. It was something I had worked my whole life to do. I'd started out getting my degree in early childhood, got a classroom position, worked my way from classroom position to an instructional coach, was a Title I coordinator, got my master's in curriculum design. Then I got my administrative license. So I had just landed this really awesome job in a local community, people I loved, really great place to bring up families. And I was hit with a health issue. my kidneys were failing and I needed a kidney transplant. Now, mind you, I had doctors telling me this could happen some point in time in my life, but it was not anywhere on my radar. And I was really amazed at how quick this transplant was needed. And to complicate the whole physical illness thing, I was in a great school district with really great people, but the leadership and I did not see eye to eye on leadership issues. So I was having some issues with my colleagues as well as having physical issues. And so I really honestly had never had that level of disconnect with what I was doing. I had never had problems with, had issues like that with my personal self or with the leadership. And there wasn't anything bad, but it threw me off. And then with my illness, I couldn't manage it. And I don't know if you know this. I'm hoping that you have heard this before, but our brains are wired to find bad things. And I was in between my illness and my mismatched position. I was finding negativity everywhere. And our brains are wired to find it. It's normal and natural. We're constantly on the lookout for negatives. And in fact, I was missing a lot of the good that was going on in my life because good things don't stick in our brains. They slip off like Teflon. And so between that event, my illness, the mismatched position, the philosophical mismatch and leadership that I was dealing with, I had to step down from the job I had worked probably 25 years for. I had to step down from the job that I had put years of study into. I had to step down from a job that I felt called to do. And that was a major setback for me. I was really hard on myself. I wasn't a quitter. I felt like I was being a quitter. I mean, there's just so many names I called myself during that time. And what was dawning on me during that time is, why aren't you worried about your health as much as you're worried about this position? Why is your family why are you not concerned about their response to your illness? So really this setback, as horrible as it was, really caused me to look at my values. It caused me to really look at what it was I was doing with my life. I can be really determined and single-minded, but this was not working out for me and my health was failing. And so I was determined that I would spend some time being nice to myself because I wasn't being nice to myself, not at all. And I ended up, that happened to be the year I was turning 50. And so I spent a year being nice to myself for my 50th birthday. Some things I did during that time is I wrote letters to people I loved and I told them how much they had meant to me. I made sure that my parents heard from me. I made sure to get a hold of people I'd worked with over the years who had done a lot for me. I was able to say thank you. So I pulled a lot of gratitude and positive, started trying to stick that on my Teflon brain, those good things that was happening. Spent a lot of time in self-study, both Bible, spiritual practices, and then also in understanding how the brain works. Because my brain, I knew, was not right. Let's see quotes. I was a quote queen. I shared all kinds of quote queens. And even, I think if you go on Pinterest today, you'll see something about DeShawn's 50th birthday being best friends with myself. Anyway, I might include that in the curated material below if I can find it real quick for us. You're welcome to check that out. So I spent a whole year being nice to moi, treating her like I would a friend, because I had no self-compassion for myself. And that's what we're going to do today. I hope you don't go through a process like that where you don't know how to treat yourself nice. And I'll be honest with you, most of the clients I work with often talk horribly to themselves, especially when they're screwing up, especially when they're making mistakes. So we're going to spend a couple of minutes here talking about the process that I've described below in the email, which is we are going to send ourselves a letter in futureme.org about next time a failure trigger comes up, what are you going to do? Because developing a system is more important than having the goal that you're going to be nice to yourself. We've got to come up with a system, right? So the thing about being self-compassionate, Dr. Kristen Neff, who's one of my gurus, I have lots of them, she talks about the importance of self-compassion and how it's different. It's not self-pity. It's not letting yourself off the hook, but it's being mindful that noticing that you're in pain, you're in trouble, it hurts. A lot of times we just skip over that fact. So being mindful, catching ourselves being mindful, humanity, understanding that we're humans and all of humanity struggles. All of humanity suffers. So understanding that we're just like the rest of the people that are on this planet, that's important to acknowledge. We're all human. We all suffer, and horrible things, setbacks, happen to us. And then also learning to talk to yourself kindly. Beating a dead horse does not get it to move. So saying crappy things is not going to get you in a better position. You need to self-soothe and come up with some kind things to say. Okay, so below this video is going to be a couple of curated items for you to check out and do in the challenge. The challenge includes a video interview with me and TV crusher Alan Brown on self-compassion. We talk about it, and he actually gives 3 great interventions that you can use as you're writing your letter. I'm not going to go into them right now, because he explains them great. And I also put time marks in there so you can find those 3 different pieces. It's a 20-minute video. Half of it's an interview with me. You don't have to listen to that part, but the beginning is really, really, really good. So there's 3 interventions. The other thing that's going to be curated below in this email is a 25-question assessment on self-compassion that Dr. Neff wrote. I use this self-assessment several times a year, especially during difficult times, so that I know how to help myself get over the failure triggers. And, you may be wondering, you may be thinking, gee, DeShawn, why don't I, I deserve to be, upset after a failure. You certainly do. And that's mindfully acknowledging it, but it's not going to get you back on track any faster. It's not going to get you productive. It's not going to help your soul. It's not going to get, when mama ain't happy, guess what? Nobody else is too. So getting you back on an even keel, getting you back into production, getting you back doing things becomes really important, especially when we're experiencing setbacks. Okay. I'm also going to, again, include Katie's guest post about triggers in case you missed it the first time around, or to review it as you're thinking through what your setbacks are. So the Future Me org uses an account. You set up an account. Hopefully you've set that up. If not, you're welcome to do it this week. You write a letter to yourself. You're going to talk about the number one trigger that you have. And you're going to write to yourself and you're going to say something nice. So I call myself Shawnee when I'm all stressed out. Hey, that's nice. That's a sweet name that my family and loved ones called me when I was a young girl. And I talk to myself in that same voice. Hey, Shawnee, this is a setback. Setbacks suck. You never see them coming, girl. You never see them coming. And it feels like you've been punched in the gut or somebody clocked you from behind. Okay. So notice, what does it feel like when you have this particular setback? And then I always like to talk about then I always say, setbacks happen to everybody. This is a part of being human and walking this earth, girlfriend. So use some kind words, say, this is a part of being here on this earth. And then start talking about what you do know about yourself that you do really well. I happen to give 100% when I do something. So I'm going to say, DeShawn, you give 100% every single time. You are so resourceful. You work so hard and you know what you want. And it's because of those things you love to learn. And I always say something at the end that motivates me. So, DeShawn, this setback is just another chance to learn and try again and do it even better the next time. So that's kind of the tone of the letter that you're going to write to yourself. We want to make sure that we send that to ourselves a week in advance, or 2 weeks, at least 2 weeks in advance. You can pick a month if you want to. But the whole point of writing to our future selves is, one, we'll get it when we need it in a couple of weeks. After we've kind of left some of this material, it comes back to us. And two, it's written to you from you. You'll listen to yourself. So use words that you know you'll listen to. And that increases the chance of you doing it. So now we have a process or a plan, a self-compassion plan to address those triggers when they happen, and we know they will. So I hope you enjoy this week's challenge. You can always contact me via email, just reply back, or get on the Facebook group, DM me, put a question in there. Everybody's always loved somebody else's questions. And I'll see you next week. See ya. Bye.